in old times when you used to use physical media, it was a reasonable solution to go to your hi-fi system when you're putting on a record or a CD or a cassette, or even tuning your radio, to be able to press a button to tell your system where you want the audio to come out from. And that was quite reasonable. But things have changed quite a lot in terms of the way that people play music. So you play music, it's typically all from the internet now, and you control it with your mobile phone. So controlling something remotely using your device and then having to press a button to select a room is just an inconvenient experience. It's just not a good customer experience, and it's highly inconvenient, which is why typically we don't use speaker switches nowadays. Audioflow kind of changes the way that you can think about multi-room audio, because it's a speaker switch, which is quite different. So Audioflow is a speaker switch. It comes in 3 different versions. There's a 2-way, a 3-way, and a 4-way speaker switch. It connects to your Wi-Fi network. So this allows you to control it with the Audioflow app for iOS and Android. It also allows you to control the switch via Amazon Alexa. So that means that you can operate the switch with the same device that you're using to play and control your music. So it effectively makes speaker switches convenient again. Audioflow is designed for custom installation. So the switch is 1U high, the Wi-Fi antenna is on the front. So that means if you do have it in the rack, the Wi-Fi performance isn't really hugely affected. There are drivers available for Control 4, ELAN, and there's an API available for integration with other systems. It also has really easy to use cable connections, which will allow you to unplug and replug your speaker connections. Makes it very easy to install and move around, whether it's in a rack or whether it's freestanding on a shelf. There's also a contact closure feature. That means that it has terminals on the back, and if you join those together, you can toggle Audioflow zones on and off. It allows you to integrate the switch into systems such as Luxone and Lutron and many others which support contact closure. So why would you want to use an Audioflow speaker switch? So let's talk about subzones, because there are a lot of situations where different zones of audio are actually not really different zones. Things like open plan living spaces, where you've got a kitchen and a dining room and a living room all in one big open space, or maybe a bedroom which also has a dressing room and an ensuite. You are never going to really play different music in those areas. And it's more logical just to be able to turn speakers on and off as you want and have them as one zone of audio. There's also the opportunity to add more audio to projects. So where a customer has a extension, for example, they may have speakers going into their extension, but adding an Audioflow switch means that you can very easily extend that audio into the garden. You can sell garden speakers, you can sell the installation of those, and the actual uplift for the client is not that much because they don't need to buy another amplifier. That also works in the same way for installing audio in bedrooms. You can easily extend them to bathrooms. So control system audio is pretty interesting, because if you have these open plan living areas and subzones, you can easily make it a little bit complicated for your client to actually control music. In an open plan kitchen dining, for example, you would have 2 audio endpoints in that room, and that would force you to create 2 different rooms in Control 4 and then have to manage that by grouping them together. Audioflow actually makes that way easier. It means you can have that open plan space as one room and then have icons in the navigator just to turn the speakers on and off. This is much easier for your client to use. It also helps you to meet client budgets. Now, this is really important in these times. It's, you know, there's a lot of economic pressures going on right now, and it's going to be really important to give your customers the best value possible. So being able to, people will have less money to spend on luxury, which would be integrated audio, and using switches will allow you to use less amplifiers and bring down the total cost to the customer, while still keeping some of the more profitable items, such as the installation or the speakers, into the project. So when you're specifying Audioflow, what do you need to know? Something that's really important is you do need to take care of your speaker impedance. So Audioflow uses series parallel wiring to keep the impedance of the speakers in check. Now, to learn a lot more about this, you can visit our website, or you can definitely ask questions. But I'm just going to give you a couple of really brief tips for using Audioflow. The first is that the two-way speaker switch is a series switch, so you don't really need to pay very much attention to your speaker impedance. You can just use whatever speakers. If you have a 6 ohm speaker and an 8 ohm speaker, when you have them both on at the same time, that'll be 14 ohms and your amplifier will be happy. It's not a problem. With the 3-way and the 4-way switches, the rule is that you want to use 8 ohm speakers with an amp that's happy with 4 ohms. If you do want to know anything more about speaker impedance or how Audioflow works with that, please get in touch. So there are a few other neat features about Audioflow. Yes, you can have multiple Audioflow switches on a Wi-Fi network. If you have a 3-way and a 4-way switch, the app will show you 7 buttons. It's that simple. Don't forget that there is no volume control, but with Audioflow, you have to control that with the source amplifier. You can disable zones for future connections. So if you have a 4-way Audioflow switch, you can disable one of the zones, and you can turn that into a 3-way. So that way you've got a connection to use for the future. Sometimes projects, they will come in phases, and then there might be a room that doesn't have a connection just yet because maybe it's not built, but you can design for that by using this feature. So what may come in the future, we're actually still developing a lot of features for Audioflow. We will have a feature that's a 1 at a time mode that will allow you to use any speakers you want and not need to pay very much attention to speaker impedance, because it will only do 1 zone at a time. We are also developing Matter support. So that means that you will have Apple HomeKit and Google Assistant support in the future. That will come soon. So as was said at the beginning, if you do have any kind of questions, please put them on chat or ask at the end.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Hussein. Hopefully that gives you a good idea of the product. I should add, in case it's not clear, we are UK distributors for both of these products. So if you do want pricing or any further information, then please do get in touch with me. Audioflow pricing has just gone up, you'll be pleased to hear, but still still a very reasonable. I think it's 179 RRP for the 4-way switch, which is you know, a heck of a lot cheaper than 3 zones of amplification. But yeah, questions at the end, and yeah, now on to Ryan's presentation on Rithum, after which we'll have a little demo with a fair wind for the camera that we're using, a little demo of the switch, and then answer questions. So yeah, here's Ryan.
Awesome, thanks Hussein, thanks Keir. So yeah, we're going to talk about Rithum Switch, which is essentially a decentralized control system. So yeah, it's a simple smart keypad that can be used in both retrofit and new build projects, and it's also a thermostat built in as well. So the whole focus is on decentralized control without any additional processors or rack space. So each Rithum switch is a processor in its own right, so it talks directly to the devices that it's integrating with on the network. So you don't have to worry about scaling a control processor, specifying a specific processor for a job. You put a Rithum switch in a room, that room then has Rithum control. You put it in another room, that room has Rithum control, and so on. So it's really scalable in that sense. It can function as a standalone control system. So we have various native integrations, the ones that you guys are likely interested in, Sonos, Bluos, mainly Rayco and Lutron, and probably HD Anywhere a little bit too. And it can also act as an extension of existing control systems, such as Control 4, Crestron, ELAN, etc., by utilizing HTTP via SD, which I'll talk about shortly. So we have three primary screens in Rithum Switch. So there's the scene screen, which supports up to 8 scenes from native integrations, or 8 different HTTP requests. So it pulls those scene names from the native integrations. So for example, Lutron or Rayco, it pulls that scene data, and on the screen you're able to tell the switch which scenes you want to display in the settings menu, and it will show and allow you to trigger those scenes. If you go down to 4, then each scene takes up a quarter of the screen, and then 8 you can see in the configuration there. Second screen is the media screen. So it's really simple responsive access to the basic things an end user needs to control in their audio system. So you can switch zones. We'll soon, very soon, be releasing the ability to group and ungroup zones. That's been a highly requested feature I'm not surprised about. You can also select a favorite, basic transport controls, volume control. There's not yet the ability to browse audio or anything. We're really focused on that quick, easy actions, get your favorite radio station, your favorite playlist playing, and kind of go on about your day. Then we have the climate screen. So this, as you would expect, allows you to adjust set point in multiple zones via climate integrations such as Fibaro or Tardo. There'll be a few more we're adding to that. We've had a lot of requests for heat miser, unsurprisingly. So the climate screen interfaces with those integrations to set the set point in those third-party systems. But also Rithum Switch is a thermostat. So that means it can function as a thermostat in its own right. It has a temperature sensor built in, and it allows a 7-day scheduling of the zone that it's installed in. And the way that works is it triggers a relay to open or close via one of our additional integrations. So for example, you could have a Rayco or Lutron relay that was wired into a heating zone or boiler, and that's basically cooling for heat when it's required, and provides the thermostat features. Then on top of those 3 key screens, we've got our no-look standby gestures. So very aware that we've provided a product that replaces a light switch or lighting keypad, and we need to make sure that getting the lights on is as easy as possible. So that's why we have these standby gestures. So without waking the screen, a user can simply hold their finger on the standby screen for, I think it's about half a second, and the lights will toggle on and off, or double tap to play and pause audio. You can actually combine those 2 gestures together as well, which I'll show you, or just simply tap to wake the screen. The product fits to a standard UK or EU backbox. Really easy, as you would expect with any light switch, a couple of screws, and it clicks into place. Flexible power options, as I mentioned, it can replace a standard traditional light switch or a legacy lighting keypad, so 100 to 240 volts AC or 12 to 30 volts DC. And then it communicates over 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi, and it can be set up on the screen in literally less than 3 minutes. and Kier's going to time me on that, and we'll see who's buying the beers later. All of the control is always local, always making sure everything's staying within the home network. But we do then provide over-the-air updates via the cloud and also collect diagnostics. So if there's ever a switch that's having problems and maybe the occasional crash or there's an issue with an integration or something, we can collect those diagnostics remotely and deploy an update to one switch or multiple to make sure it's handled as quickly as possible. So here's a generic topology. Pretty basic stuff. I think you guys should have no problem grasping that. So yeah, we've got Rithum switch there with power connected via Wi-Fi to router or AP, the network, and then connected to various other devices that it's integrating with. So the hardware itself ships with 2 integrations built in, and that's Sonos and Philips Hue. So it will just work out the box with those 2 systems. Then the other integrations are facilitated via plugins, and they are a one-off purchase per switch. They fit loosely into 2 categories. We have our premium plugins, which we sell online via our website, but then there's our trade-only pro plugins. So that's BlueOS, Rayco, HD Anywhere, Fubaro, Lutron, that we only sell through the channel, through good people like yourselves. And we don't publish any pricing or anything like that of those online. So yeah, as I said, that's a one-off purchase per switch. To get a specific switch to work with BlueOS, for example, you buy the BlueOS plugin for that switch. It will then work with BlueOS. Then outside of our native integrations, I mentioned HTTP via SD. So just by loading a really simple YAML file onto an SD card, you pop that in the bottom, you can then load scenes from that YAML file that will then fire HTTP requests and have the labels that you defined in that YAML file.